Imagine the most powerful spy agency on Earth, an organization so secretive, its budget is classified. Its job? To break into the digital systems of America's enemies. They have the best hackers, the most advanced cyber weapons, tools so powerful they're considered digital nuclear codes. Now imagine someone breaking into their vault. This isn't a movie plot. This really happened. It was August 2016. In a dark corner of the internet, a mysterious user appeared. They called themselves the Shadow Brokers. Their first message to the world wasn't a threat. It was something far more bizarre. It was an auction. They were offering to sell the National Security Agency's most dangerous cyber weapons to the highest bidder. To prove they were serious, they released a sample, a free teaser of digital destruction. Security researchers around the world downloaded the files with trembling hands. What they found inside was unbelievable. The files were real. And they were stamped with the digital fingerprints of the NSA's elite, secretive hacking team known as Tailored Access Operations. The Shadow Brokers had the goods, and they were mocking the US government while trying to sell them. Their message was written in broken, weird English, filled with memes and jokes. They taunted the NSA, saying, "How much you pay for enemies to be using cyber weapons against you?" Think about that. A shadowy group was threatening to sell America's own cyber weapons to North Korea, to Russia, to Iran, unless someone paid them millions in untraceable Bitcoin. This was the digital equivalent of someone stealing a stealth bomber and trying to sell it on eBay. The world's intelligence agencies went into a panic. Who were these people? How did they pull this off? And what were they going to do with the rest of the weapons they hadn't released yet? This was the start of a chain reaction that would lead to billions of dollars in damage and throw the entire world into a new era of cyber warfare. This is the story of the heist that broke the internet. This is the story of the Shadow Brokers. So the Shadow Brokers had the NSA's tools, but what does that actually mean? What was inside this digital Pandora's box they'd ripped open? It wasn't just a few lines of code. It was the entire playbook. We're talking about a full suite of hacking tools with weird sci-fi names like Epic Banana, Polar's Knees, and Extra Bacon. But these weren't just cool names. Each one was a precision key designed to pick a specific digital lock on routers, firewalls, and servers from companies like Cisco, Fortinet, and Juniper, the very companies that build the backbone of the internet. This leak was a catastrophe for global security. It meant that for years, the NSA knew about critical flaws in the world's essential internet hardware, and instead of telling the companies to fix them, they turned them into secret backdoors for their own spies. But one tool stood out from the rest. One exploit was so powerful, so dangerous, it would change the world. The Shadow Brokers called it EternalBlue. EternalBlue was different. It wasn't a key for a fancy corporate router. It was a master key for the most common operating system on the planet, Microsoft Windows. Here's how it worked. Windows has a built-in feature that lets computers on the same network talk to each other and share files. It's a fundamental piece of plumbing for offices and homes worldwide. EternalBlue exploited a critical flaw in that system. Imagine this flaw is like a crack in the foundation of every house on your street. The NSA didn't just find the crack. They figured out that by singing a specific, perfect note, they could make the entire house collapse. That note was a tiny malicious packet of data. A hacker could send that note to any unpatched Windows computer on a network. They didn't need you to click a link. They didn't need to trick you with an email. Your computer would receive this data packet and just let them in, instantly, silently. It was the ultimate hacking tool, a cyber weapon of mass destruction. And the most terrifying part? The NSA had known about this flaw for years. They discovered it, weaponized it, and used it for their own operations. They chose to keep it a secret from Microsoft, leaving hundreds of millions of computers around the world completely vulnerable. They were sitting on a ticking time bomb, confident that only they had the trigger. The Shadow Brokers didn't just steal the bomb. They stole the trigger, photocopied it 1,000,000 times, and threw the blueprints online for anyone to find. The master key to the digital world was now in the hands of every criminal, hacker, and hostile government on Earth. And it was only a matter of time before someone used it. So how did they do it? How did a mysterious group of hackers pull off the ultimate digital heist against the very agency tasked with preventing them? The answer is the most shocking part of this entire story. The prevailing theory isn't about a sophisticated external hack. It wasn't a genius-level exploit. It was about a mistake a billion-dollar, earth-shattering facepalm of a mistake. Most people imagine the NSA's cyber weapons are stored on a supercomputer in a mountain fortress, disconnected from the internet, with a retinal scanner on the door. But that's not how a global hacking operation works. Their elite hackers, the Tailored Access Operations, TAO group, are deployed all over the world. They need access to their tools from remote locations. To make this happen, the NSA sets up secret command and control servers, digital arms depots, in hidden corners of the internet. Now, setting up one of these servers is incredibly complex. It requires a team of experts and a long checklist of security protocols to make it invisible and untouchable. And according to multiple intelligence community reports, someone on that team got lazy. The leading theory is that an NSA operator, likely working remotely, configured one of these highly sensitive servers and left the default password on it. Yes, you heard that right. The default password. It's the digital equivalent of building an impenetrable vault to store your stealth bomber blueprints, and then locking it with a key you bought at a hardware store and never changed the lock. Another theory suggests a related error. The server was accidentally left exposed to the public internet without any firewall protection. It was just sitting there, wide open, waiting for anyone who stumbled upon its digital address. And who stumbled upon it? Most evidence points towards a rival intelligence agency, specifically Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR. Their elite hacking group, known as Cozy Bear, is believed to have been scanning the internet 24/7, looking for exactly this kind of mistake. They weren't trying to break down a fortified door. They were just walking through an open one that the NSA had accidentally left unlocked. Once the Russians were inside, they had a field day. They didn't just find one tool, they found the entire arsenal. They vacuumed up everything. The exploits, the implants, the secret manuals, years and years of the NSA's most classified work. For a while, the Russians just sat on this treasure trove. They could now see every digital trick the US had, allowing them to build better defenses and even use some of the tools themselves without anyone knowing. But then, in 2016, something changed. For reasons we still don't fully understand. A group calling itself the Shadow Brokers appeared, offering to sell the NSA's tools to the world. Were they a rogue element within Russian intelligence? Were they trying to embarrass the US and create chaos? Or was it a calculated act of geopolitical warfare? We may never know for sure, but one thing is certain: the greatest breach in American espionage history likely wasn't caused by a master hacker. It was caused by a moment of carelessness, a skipped step on a checklist that handed over the keys to the kingdom. The shadow brokers got tired of waiting. Their auction hadn't brought them the mountain of Bitcoin they wanted. The security world, terrified of the legal and ethical ramifications, had refused to pay. So, they changed their strategy. If no one would buy the NSA's cyber weapons, they would just give them away. In a series of monthly data dumps, they began releasing the tools for free. They published them on GitHub and Twitter, making them available to anyone with an internet connection. It was an act of pure, unadulterated chaos. Nation-state hackers, criminal gangs, and amateur script kiddies suddenly had access to hacking capabilities that were once the exclusive domain of a global superpower. The digital arms race was over. The nuclear codes had been published in the newspaper, and it was only a matter of time before someone pressed the big red button. That moment came on May 12, 2017. It started in hospitals across England. Screens in operating rooms and emergency wards suddenly went dark. A chilling red message flashed on every computer, written in broken English. "Oops, your files have been encrypted." It demanded a payment of $300 in Bitcoin to unlock them. This was WannaCry. But this wasn't ordinary ransomware. This was something new, something far more vicious. It was a worm, and its engine, its heart and soul, was the NSA's own EternalBlue exploit. WannaCry didn't need a person to open an email. It didn't need to trick anyone. It simply jumped from computer to computer on its own, like a zombie virus. It would infect one machine in a hospital, use EternalBlue to scan the network for other vulnerable Windows computers, and then infect them too. It spread at a terrifying exponential rate. Within hours, it was a global pandemic. The UK's National Health Service was brought to its knees. Surgeries were cancelled. X-rays couldn't be viewed. Ambulances were diverted. Beyond hospitals, it hit factories, banks, railways, and telecommunications companies. Over 200,000 computers in 150 countries were infected in a single day. The world was watching a digital plague unfold in real time. And just as the world began to recover from WannaCry, a second, even more devastating attack emerged, this one aimed directly at Ukraine. A new piece of malware called NotPetya began to spread. It disguised itself as ransomware, but it was something much, much worse. A wiper. Its goal wasn't to make money. Its goal was to simply destroy, to erase. It also used the stolen NSA tool, EternalBlue, to rip through networks. It wiped out Ukrainian government agencies, banks, and power companies. But like a fire jumping a highway, it didn't stop at the border. It spread globally, crippling massive multinational corporations. Shipping giant Maersk saw its entire global network, ports, tankers, offices, go offline. Pharmaceutical company Merck had its vaccine production research wiped out. The total damage was estimated at over $10 billion, making it the most destructive cyber attack in history. And the cruelest irony? These global catastrophes, which cost billions and put lives at risk, were powered by a cyber weapon built by the United States government. The very agency tasked with protecting the homeland had, through a catastrophic mistake, armed the world with its most dangerous weapon. The shadow brokers had vanished into the shadows, but the fires they started were still burning. In the wake of the global chaos, two burning questions remained. Who were the shadow brokers, and what happened to them? The world demanded answers, but the answers were shrouded in a fog of digital smoke and mirrors. The investigation was one of the most complex in cyber history, but the clues pointed in one dominant direction. This was an inside job, but not from within the NSA. The evidence was in the details. The bizarre, meme-filled language of their posts wasn't just random. It was a specific style, a digital fingerprint. Cybersecurity analysts and intelligence agencies began to piece together a profile. The hackers had an advanced knowledge of the NSA's internal systems. They used phrases and jokes that resonated with a specific, niche internet culture. Their operational security was both brilliant and sloppy, suggesting state-level resources but with a rogue element. All signs pointed to a group called Fancy Bear, or APT-28, an elite hacking unit widely known to be operated by Russian military intelligence, the GRU. The motive seemed less about money and more about geopolitical sabotage. By leaking the tools, Russia could desound, embarrass and humiliate the NSA, its primary intelligence rival. 2. Create massive chaos and distrust in Western institutions. 3. Gain plausible deniability for the attacks that followed, as they could now be blamed on random criminals using American tools. But was it a direct order from the Kremlin? Or was it a rogue unit within the GRU acting on its own? The truth may never be officially confirmed. Then, there was the strange case of Reality Winner. In June 2017, just as the WannaCry attacks were fading from the headlines, a 25-year-old NSA contractor was arrested. She was charged with leaking a top-secret report about Russian attempts to hack into US voting systems. The media frenzy was immediate. Was she connected to the shadow brokers? The timing was suspicious, but the evidence didn't line up. Winner was a classic whistleblower, leaking a single document to a news outlet. The shadow brokers were a sprawling, ongoing operation leaking thousands of files. Her story was a tragic sidebar to the main event, a reminder of the intense paranoia and fallout the leak created within the US intelligence community. So what was the fate of the individuals behind the shadow brokers? The truth is, we don't know. They vanished as mysteriously as they appeared. Their Twitter account went silent. Their dumping ground on GitHub was shut down. There are only theories. Perhaps they are living under state protection in Moscow, decorated as heroes and enjoying their anonymity. Perhaps they were quietly retired by their own handlers after their usefulness ended, their mission of causing maximum chaos accomplished. Or perhaps they are still out there, watching, their identities hidden behind a veil of memes and Bitcoin wallets that, to this day, remain almost entirely empty. They achieved a level of infamy that no hacker group has ever reached before or since. They proved that no one is untouchable, that the most powerful digital army in the world could be brought down by its own carelessness. They unleashed a wave of cyber war that permanently changed how we think about security, privacy, and power in the digital age. They were ghosts, and ghosts don't leave fingerprints. The dust has settled. The attacks are over. The shadow brokers are gone. But the world they left behind is fundamentally, permanently changed. Their actions weren't just a hack. They were a catalyst that forced a global reckoning on security, secrecy, and power in the digital age. The first and most immediate change was within the NSA itself. The agency faced a storm of criticism from every direction. How could the world's premier spy agency be so careless with its most dangerous tools? Internally, it was a humiliation of the highest order. Externally, it was a massive blow to its credibility. The leak forced a long overdue and very public review of the NSA's vulnerability equities process, the secretive system, by which the government decides whether to hoard a discovered software flaw for its own use or disclose it to the company so it can be patched and protect everyone. The argument for stockpiling zero-day exploits is intelligence value. The argument for disclosing them is collective security. The shadow brokers proved, in the most devastating way possible, that hoarding these flaws is an insanely dangerous game. You can't keep a cyber nuke secret and assume the blueprint will never get stolen. The fallout also shattered the fragile trust between the US tech industry and the government. Companies like Microsoft were furious. They found out about the EternalBlue flaw from the leak, not from the government they often collaborated with. Microsoft's president, Brad Smith, famously compared the NSA's actions to the US military having its Tomahawk missiles stolen. The message was clear. You built this weapon, lost it, and now our customers are dealing with the consequences. This event galvanized the entire tech industry to prioritize security like never before, to build more resilient systems, and to be far more wary of government collaboration. The legal and geopolitical landscape was also rewritten. The US government, seeking to regain some control, indicted several alleged Russian GRU officers for the NotPetya attack, officially labeling it a destructive act of cyber warfare. In a historic first, an insurance company sued a nation-state, Russia, for damages caused by the attack. The rules of engagement had changed. We had entered a new era of cyber conflict, where attacks on private companies could be treated as acts of war by a foreign government. But perhaps the most ironic and tragic legacy of the shadow brokers is that they ultimately created more of what they supposedly opposed: a more powerful and invasive surveillance state. The chaos they unleashed was used as a justification for governments around the world to push for greater monitoring powers, more control over encryption, and expanded abilities to hack back against threats. They wanted to expose the surveillance machine, but they may have just given it more fuel. Today, the internet is a more dangerous place. The tools the shadow brokers released are still out there, baked into the foundational code of countless malware kits available for hire on the dark web. They lowered the barrier to entry for cybercrime, empowering a new generation of hackers. The story of the shadow brokers is the ultimate cautionary tale. It's a story about the immense power of code and the immense danger of arrogance. It proved that a single point of failure, one lazy mistake, one misconfigured server, can have consequences that ripple across the globe, affecting millions of innocent people. It showed that in this new Cold War, fought in the shadows of the internet, there are no real winners. There is only a broken world, desperately trying to patch its vulnerabilities, knowing that the next master key is already out there, waiting to be found.